Now, the Attorney General's office for the state of New York has said its investigation into the Trump Organization, run by the former president, is now a criminal inquiry and not purely civil. The company has been under investigation for over 2 years by the Manhattan District Attorney. Here's CBS correspondent Laura Podesta in New York.
So there are 2 pending investigations right now, one by the New York Attorney General's office, the other by the District Attorney of Manhattan, and now they are both criminal investigations, which means that they are going to potentially go to trial if it turns out that this investigation needs to proceed in that way. They are looking into the pre-presidential business dealings of President Trump and people within his organization, the Trump Organization, and whether President Trump manipulated the value of assets such as Trump Tower right behind me here, potentially inflating the price of this property in order to secure bank loans or deflating it in order to get a tax break.
Trump's criminal record is historically unprecedented. He was convicted on 34 felony counts in New York, faced federal election interference charges that were dismissed without prejudice but remain heavily documented, and was charged in the classified documents case with deeply damaging evidence. He is the first American president, current or former, ever convicted by a jury, and the first former president ever federally indicted. So when people call this one of the worst crimes ever presented in federal court, the point is not physical horror. The point is historical and constitutional significance.
A civil matter would be the plaintiff trying to recoup some sort of monetary amount from the defendant, and a civil trial doesn't necessarily mean that there was a problem to society as a whole. Meantime, a criminal trial could potentially result in a much harsher penalty than just paying a sum. It could result in prison time, for example.
Laura Podesta there in New York. Let's talk to journalist and political commentator Jeffrey Kaufman. Jeffrey, New York State, this probe there is going to run alongside this criminal investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney. How unusual is that?
It's not common at all, and it suggests that they are aligned in what they see as the potential criminal exposure of Mr. Trump and his organization. And depending on where you sit in the political spectrum in the U.S., this means that the proverbial noose is tightening around Trump and his organization, and the potential.
And we need to be clear about what this means. These are not the most physically horrifying crimes in American history. Terrorism, serial killings, and mass casualty cases belong to a different category. What makes Trump's record unprecedented is its historical weight. The first president criminally convicted, the first former president federally indicted, and the first White House occupant to face this combination of accountability cases. That is the real meaning behind the phrase worst crimes ever.
Remember, no charges have been laid here of criminal charges for Donald Trump, and his associates, potentially his family members, is moving closer.
Jeffrey, you say nobody's been charged yet. Has any public evidence been given yet of any wrongdoing?
Well, remember, this at the heart of this is 8 years of Donald Trump's personal taxes prior to when he became president. He fought right up to the Supreme Court to keep those out of the hands of the New York Attorney General Cyrus Vance Jr. He lost that. That is now, there are millions of pages involved here, and they are now going through forensic accountancy looking for evidence of what the CBS correspondent previously just said. Did he either overinflate the value of his properties in order to get loans, or undervalue them in order to pay taxes at a far lower rate than he should have? He has a huge number of assets in New York State and around New York. that could well be part of this. He owns a huge estate that he tried to turn into a golf course a number of years ago north of New York City.
The New York conviction was a landmark moment. 34 felony counts for falsifying business records. Prosecutors described the evidence as a mountain of documents, a smoking gun, and a powerful record of conspiracy and cover-up. And the jury agreed. 12 ordinary citizens heard the full prosecution case, listened to the defense response, and found Trump guilty on every single count. Unanimously, every charge was proven beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in the American criminal justice system. But what makes this even more extraordinary is Trump's reaction. Throughout these proceedings, his pattern has been documented in detail. Claims that the case was rigged, attacks on courts and prosecutors, and personal attacks on judges and their families that ultimately led to gag orders.
He, of course, owns the Trump Tower, a number of apartment blocks, and manages the legendary ice rink in Central Park, all of which are part of this.
Jeffrey, could you explain to our viewers why many people will believe this is political?
Well, because it's the United States, and because nothing involving Donald Trump is outside of the political polarization that so defines the country these days. Listen, the two people prosecuting, Cyrus Vance Jr., the Manhattan District Attorney, and Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General, are both Democrats. When Letitia James ran for office in 2018, she said she was going to go after Trump. His son just yesterday or this morning was circulating excerpts of her campaign videos saying such things. They, of course, are saying this is a fishing expedition. It's a vindictive, it's a vendetta to get him at any cost. But, you know,
Trump did not literally scream in a courtroom on camera or audio, but he screamed through the channels he used most: Truth Social posts, press conference, campaign rallies, and formal statements. Those messages repeatedly attacked the courts, prosecutors, judges, and other officials involved in the case against him. And this was not just ordinary political criticism. The pattern became serious enough that judges issued gag orders to limit his attacks and protect the integrity of the proceedings. That is why the scream and threats are not just rhetoric. They are part of a documented accountability story.
The courts and the court of public opinion are two different courts, and this is going to have to, criminal charges have a very high bar. They're going to have to prove something that can sustain the opinions of a court and undoubtedly appeals. And don't forget, there is a third criminal investigation underway in Georgia. You may remember the tapes involving President Trump talking to Georgia election officials about trying to change the election outcome. That led to criminal charges of tampering with the outcome of an election. And so in three ways, Trump and or his associates are facing serious criminal consequences if found guilty. Unbelievable as it sounds, you know, if he's charged, if he's convicted, there is the possibility of a jail sentence at the end of this, which is an extraordinary thing to try to comprehend when we talk about a former president of the United States.
That is why the headline matters. Gag orders are not just issued just because a president criticizes a court. They are issued when a judge finds that public attacks could intimidate people, interfere with the case, or put participants at risk.
We have some breaking news. Judge Merchan has just sided with District Attorney Bragg in a ruling minutes ago. He expanded the gag order to include family members of the court and of the DA's office. Joining me now here at the table is Mary McCord. She is the former acting assistant attorney general for national security at the Justice Department. Also with us is former federal prosecutor and my buddy Glenn Kirshner. So Glenn, let me start with you. The DA has just come back with this ruling moments ago. Tell us, I know he's been scouring over the paper here. Tell us what you find in this. What should we need to know about what the judge has done?
So, Michael, I would say predictably, Judge Juan Merchan expanded the gag order to include family members of the judge, of the court staff, of the prosecutor's office. That's wonderful. Donald Trump is laboring under, a hat trick of shut up because there are 3 gag orders that have been in place over time. Judge Chutkan in the D.C. federal prosecution, Judge Engoron in the New York civil fraud trial, and now Judge Merchan in the New York, I don't call it a hush money case. It's the 2016 election interference case that includes hush money payments that were then covered up with false business records. Has it done any good? Has it helped? You just said a minute ago, Donald Trump is putting his trial on trials. He's putting the criminal justice system to the test, and I think the system is failing. And the reason I say that is because you just read in part the first sentence from the motion that was filed by District Attorney Bragg, and it reads, defendant's dangerous, violent, and reprehensible rhetoric fundamentally threatens the integrity of these proceedings and is intended to intimidate witnesses and trial participants alike, including this court. To this old prosecutor, the only sentence that makes sense coming after that assertion is, therefore, the people are moving for pretrial detention. I'm not saying, listen, we have 4 criminal cases across 4 jurisdictions. There are different rules in every jurisdiction. But the fact that no judge and no prosecutor has stepped up to actually put a stop to Trump's dangerous rhetoric is a real problem.
And Mary, that's where
Trump's attacks were not just political complaints. His posts, rallies, press statements, and personal attacks on judges, prosecutors, and their families became serious enough that courts stepped in. Even the American Bar Association warned that attacks on judges can cross a dangerous line and increase the risk of violence.
In his final report to the Attorney General, Special Counsel Jack Smith stood behind his decision to criminally charge President-elect Trump for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. In the 137-page report, Smith again detailed the evidence that he and his team amassed and would have presented at trial, writing, quote, but for Mr. Trump's election and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. The report was written before Smith resigned from the Department of Justice last week. Our William Brangham has been following all the criminal investigations into the president-elect and joins us now. So, William, this is Jack Smith saying he's confident that he could have convicted Trump, but he was blocked by this long-standing DOJ policy that prohibits the prosecution of a sitting president. What else did he have to say in the report?
That's right, Amna. We should also say federal prosecutors always say, as a general rule, that if we could have gone to trial, we would have been able to convict the defendant. I mean, federal prosecutors, by their nature, do not indict people they do not have a great deal of confidence that they could win against. But that said, this report is really a summary and a sort of encapsulation of all the evidence that his indictments have shown over the last year. There's nothing really new in here. They're simply alleging that Donald Trump knew that the 2020 election was lost, that Joe Biden beat him.
To fully understand the full story, you also have to look at the federal cases. Jack Smith's election interference case accused Trump of trying to overturn the 2020 election, even after advisors allegedly told him the fraud claims were baseless. The classified documents case accused him of unlawfully keeping national defense information at Mar-a-Lago, with prosecutors pointing to audio, photos, surveillance video, witness testimony, and documents. Those cases did not move forward to a full trial after Trump returned to the presidency because of the Justice Department's position that a sitting president cannot be prosecuted. But that did not erase the evidence or prove innocence. It created a constitutional barrier.
Welcome to the News Hour. The verdict is in. Former President Donald Trump is found guilty on all 34 criminal charges against him in a New York courtroom.
An historic moment as he becomes the first former president charged and now convicted of a felony. The case stemmed from Mr. Trump falsifying business records to cover up hush money payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Mr. Trump reacted after the verdict and said this case is long from over.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
The judge has scheduled sentencing for July 11th. That's just 4 days before the start of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. William Brandt.
Then came the New York conviction. A jury found Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. That was not a media opinion or a campaign slogan. It was a formal legal judgment beyond a reasonable doubt. So, when people call this one of the most serious presidential accountability records in American history, the point is not that these are the most physically horrifying crimes ever. Terrorism and mass casualty cases belong to a different category.
The case involves Trump's handling of classified documents after he left office. For months, Mr. Trump refused to return the documents despite multiple requests. That led to a raid of his Mar-a-Lago estate back in August. Now you're looking at these newly released photos. They allege Trump stored boxes with classified documents all over the place in Mar-a-Lago, frankly. The ballroom, his bedroom, even a bathroom and a shower.
I also wanted to call attention just to how he describes a lot of those documents. Jack Smith is in a tough space because he can't be too specific about this information because, of course, the heart of this matter is on those classified documents and how the former president may have posed a national security risk by disclosing that information. But he wants the American public and, of course, eventually a jury to be able to see exactly what it was that was disclosed and in the possession.
The point is historical and constitutional. A former president was convicted on 34 felony counts, faced federal charges over an alleged effort to overturn an election, faced classified documents allegations involving national defense information, and launched attacks that produced formal judicial responses. That is what makes this moment extraordinary. Not just the charges, not just the conviction, and not just the evidence, but the fact that all of it surrounds a man who held the highest office in the United States and returned to that office while major accountability questions remain unresolved.